Thank you, and we're very pleased to have with us José Antonio Ocampo, the chair of the International Commission of Experts on Financing for Development, who is also the professor of professional practice in international and public affairs at Columbia University. And he's here to brief on the launch of the report entitled Financing a Sustainable Future, Proposals for a Renewed Global Development Finance Agenda. Thank you very much. It's great to see you here again.
Well, no, thank you very much. I'm very glad to be with you today. Let me perhaps summarize the history of this commission. So this, as you know, the fourth session, the fourth conference on financing for development will take place in Spain in June, July of this year, and the zero draft prepared by or coordinated by the co-facilitators is already public, and our report is going to be public tomorrow. The commission was an idea of the government of Spain, so he convened 14 of us, 14 experts from all around the world. As I always say, with a great gender balance, because we're half, and from all over the world. We have from this professor from Columbia University, Latin Americans, Africans, Asians, Europeans. So it's really a very diverse in the origins of the people. And so we prepared these recommendations that we hope will be considered by in the right of the second version of the recommendations that to be approved by the governments in Spain. So our report basically has more or less a structure that is more or less similar to that of the zero draft. So we have I'll mention the 9 topics, and I'm of course open to questions from you on any of them. The first one is tax cooperation, which, as you know, is also subject to a process of negotiations of a UN convention that is already going on. I think they had already their first negotiation meeting. The second topic is, or the next topics are about development cooperation, but the second one is about the role of multilateral development banks, national development banks, and the development of domestic bond markets in developing countries. The third on development financing also is about official development assistance and concessional financing. The fourth is on environmentally sustainable finance. Then the fifth is on issues on trade, industrialization, and investment. I must say investment is an issue that is not quite dealt with in the zero draft. Then we have sovereign debt restructuring, which is one of the most heated issues in the current controversies. The seventh is called the strengthening the global safety net, which is basically about the international monetary system. The eighth is about issues of financial regulation, and finally, we have some critical institutional issues. I can answer questions on any of these topics, but let me perhaps say that again, one of the most heated issues currently is the issue of debt restructuring. And in that regard, it's treated well in one of the sections of zero draft, but we have, for example, additional recommendations. Our recommendations is that we have we must have a much better mechanism for the renegotiations in the short term. The negotiations take place in the G20 common framework, but that has been very difficult to use. It has been used only by 4 African countries after very complex and long negotiations. So we're proposing, to improve that mechanism, and very importantly, to give access to middle-income countries, because that mechanism is only for low-income countries. And the second is that we believe there must be institutionally a permanent mechanism to renegotiate sovereign debts, which could be either a UN institution or could be associated to the IMF, if the decisions of that board are independent of the IMF board. So it's a judicial system inside the IMF, let's call it that way. That's one of the proposals. We have, as I said, recommendations in many other topics, but I'm actually open to questions from you on the specific issues that you may be interested. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'll turn the floor to questions. First question goes to Pam Falk.
Yes, on behalf of the UN Correspondents Association, thank you, Professor Ocampo, for being here and advising and briefing us. I'm Pamela Falk from U.S. News and World Report. We haven't seen the report yet. Could you tell us what's the principal recommendation on debt restructuring? Who is supposed to be redoing this? You mentioned the IMF. And what is going to, will the Sevilla, the Spain summit that's coming up, deal with less aid coming in from the United States? Thank you.
Well, let me, well, I think the recommendations on debt restructuring, in a sense, I already mentioned. It's a better short-term restructuring mechanism, better than the sovereign debt restructuring of the G20, which is the one that is being used, and a permanent institution for debt restructuring.
G20 and IMF?
No, the G20 is the one that launched the short-term mechanism.
And the IMF being the restructuring?
I said it could be a United Nations institution, or it could be in the IMF. It could be in any one of them. Now, let's say, since you are asking about USAID, let me say that of course, in official development assistance, we propose, let's say, a significant increase in official development assistance. Particularly, I mean, one of the oldest UN targets is the 0.7% of gross national income that the developed countries should provide in terms of development assistance. Now, the U.S. has never met that criteria. So several European countries do. And of course, since that's a UN target, we emphasize it again, as well as the other target, the complementary target, which is 0.2% for for least developed countries. Least developed countries, as you know, are followed up by the Committee for Development Policy, of which I am a member. I have actually chaired that committee for many years. But and we push also from the committee, but also in this report, not only to meet that criteria, but to increase it a bit more, because those are the poorest countries of the world, let's say, and in that regard. We also, in relation to that area of the report, we also propose more or an increase in humanitarian assistance, because that's becoming a major issue in many parts of the world. So that's it. By the way, in the other areas of development financing, which are the banks, let's say, we actually also push to meet the criteria of this expert group of the G20 that last year recommended basically tripling the financing from multilateral development banks by 2030. So that's also a proposal that we, and of course, an issue that has been a subject to a lot of discussion, which is more use of the domestic currencies of developing countries. which has two dimensions in our proposals. One is that the banks should start increasing the financing in domestic currency. This is important because it protects the developing countries from increasing the debt when they devalue their currencies. So that's an important point. And the other is to promote the gradual development of the domestic bond markets. That's probably for middle-income countries, and it can be successful. It's a long-term, gradual process, you know. Yeah.
Yes, yes, please.
Hello, thank you very much for being here. My name is Mercedes Gallego from El Correo, from Spain too. And I was wondering, of course, I haven't seen the report, but outside of that, if the change in the US policies, the shutdown of all the international aid for development, is going to affect the conclusions that you are, and how do you think the role of helping international developing countries has to be looked at on the light of these changes?
Yeah, of course, we have to see exactly what will happen. I mean, because the government, on the one hand, has announced, said the absorption by the State Department of USAID, but at the same time has told the workers of USD that essentially there will be a change. They will replace and calling them back to the United States. Anyway, so the whole cooperation that the USAID does at the international level, which is very significant in many areas, will be essentially cut off. Let's take, for example, at my country, Colombia, which is actually the major recipient of USAID funds in this continent. They have been a very important for, let's say, for several things, but for example, for the peace process, for the peace process with the major guerrilla, the FARC, which is supported by the United Nations. Actually, it's a subject of the UN General Security Council every year. But also, for example, for combating narco-trafficking. The coca production, that's also a subject of that, of the USAID. And then humanitarian assistance in some parts of the country. So, but there's humanitarian assistance for USAID in many. When you have a conflict, I mean, including Gaza or the, I guess, the Congo now, they do have, excuse me, of Sudan, for example. They also provide assistance to people affected by the conflict. So yeah, it's now we don't know exactly how much of these funds are going to be cut. Definitely, that's something that has not yet been announced. I mean, there's an announcement of probably a reduction and change in the institutional structure, so absorption by the State Department, but we don't yet know how much the funds are going to be cut.
But already there are warehouses that have been shut down, NGOs that are canceling hiring because they had some relationship with the funds that were coming. So is there a freeze in the international help for development after this decision?
No, of course, this is against certainly of the recommendations, certainly of this process, and certainly of our committee. I mean, we're asking for an increase in development assistance, certainly not a decrease in development assistance.
I don't see any other questions, both either online or in the room. Are there any other questions? If not, I will free up our guest. It's a pleasure having you here.
Okay, very good. And as I said, tomorrow at 1:15, we have the launch of our report. And okay, so thank you. Yes, I think it's going to be the website of the UN. Okay?
Yeah, we'll post it up. And thank you very much.
No, my pleasure.